Hello, and welcome to Series 2 of Sam Interviews. This episode, we are joined by comedian Jamie Allerton. As always, follow this guest on social media. Follow Jamie on Instagram at AltonJamie and on Twitter at JAlton. As always, you can also follow me on social media as well. That is Sam James-Neal on Instagram, and I am Sam Rick on Twitter. And you can also follow the podcast on social media as well, and that is Sam James-Neal Pod on both Instagram and Twitter. Thank you for being here, and welcome to Series 2. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sam.
Hello. So I always start with a very questions to get to know who you are before we get into the questions about comedy. So the first question is, what is your favorite TV show?
So I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm a movie man, so I'd have to go back to when I was young. It's probably Red Dwarf. You seen Red Dwarf?
I haven't heard of it.
You never heard of Red Dwarf? Oh wow, that's made me feel old. It's a BBC sitcom sci-fi about a bunch of people trapped out in space, and
Okay.
Craig Charles is like the main character. And me and my brother, growing up in Liverpool, we'd always watch. It's nice to see a Scouser on TV. Yeah, I'd recommend checking that out. It should be on iPlayer. I think it's on Netflix.
Okay. I tend to ask people I invite onto the podcast those that question because I want to watch more TV shows and stuff, so I always end up watching them anyway. But I'll definitely check it out.
Well, it was very low budget for the first 2 seasons, I think, so stick with it.
Okay. It was the same with The Mighty Boosh, though. That's a good show. But I watched that show backwards, so I started with the last series and then worked the way down.
Yeah, I never managed to get through the Mighty Boosh, embarrassingly so. There's loads of TV there's just too much TV. That's the problem.
That is true. I tend to have a few actors and then kind of just keep with those actors. So I kind of keep with Joe Thomas.
Oh yeah.
And that kind of Liam Williams and stuff, and I kind of keep with the actors. You mentioned you like movies, so what's your favorite movie?
It probably The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. Have you seen that, Kurt Russell?
I think I've heard of it. I've not seen it though.
that's from the early 80s, and it's a horror film set in Antarctica, I think. Yeah, where an alien just comes and invades, but it had groundbreaking special effects at the time, and the guy who did the special effects actually went into hospital with exhaustion afterwards, which is the sign of a good film if people are going into hospital afterwards.
I haven't seen it. Again, I definitely will check it out.
I mean, this is an opportunity. I could just give you the worst movies and the worst TV to watch.
Oh, go ahead.
Really screw you over.
Honestly, the thing is, I'd watch it because I'm the last person to tell you what good TV and good movies are. My favorite actor is Adam Sandler. I'm not someone to tell you what a good film is.
Adam Sandler's a weird one, isn't he? Because just when you write him off as creating the worst content for Netflix, he'll come out with something that should be, Oscar nominated.
Uncut Gems was really, really, really good.
Yeah, I haven't seen Uncut Gems, and my housemate ruined the ending for me, so I've not watched it.
Yeah, it does ruin it when you know the ending with that one.
I've heard it's stressful though. I've heard it's the most stressful movie you can watch.
It is really stressful. I think it's a good film though. And then he recently released Hustle as well, and that's a really good film.
Is that the basketball one?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah, I need to see that. That's the problem with being a comedian, is you never have any time to watch something. If you haven't, it's nice to have a night off and watch a film, but most nights off I get now, I'm like, bed, yes, great.
Moving on slightly, do you have a favorite book?
Favorite book? Yeah, there's one called Nathan's Run that I read when I was a kid. Well, probably would have been about 14, by John Gilstrap. It's set in America, and it's about a kid who goes into a juvenile detention facility, and his uncle finds out that there'll be some money if that kid dies in the facility. So he has someone go in to kill him, and he escapes. And it's kind of all about how America treats the kids in juvenile detention.
I've not heard of it,
Oh,
but it
it's
sounds
not a
really, really
well-known book.
interesting. It sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's
Um,
one that I've come. You kind of read a book maybe once every year, once every 2 years. That's one that I keep going back to.
I need to find a book like that. I've read a lot. I mean, this looks like I read a lot. I don't read that much, but
I like that you've
I'm
color
on like
coded your books though. That's nice.
I've it was a lot of work for something that like only a very few amount of people have noticed. So I appreciate the fact you've noticed. But I've only read like 18 books this year, which sounds like a lot, but I've got friends that read like 60 a year.
Yeah. I don't get when people sometimes you'll hear like a podcast host say, "Oh, they'll welcome a guest and go, I read your book over the weekend." And like, how did you do that?
I don't get that. I can't do that.
I've been stuck on the Count of Monte Cristo for 4 years now, and that's not an exaggeration. I've I've been reading it for 4 years because it's just taken me so long to get through.
I've got books like that at the moment.
Hmm. I was trying to have a non-fiction and a fiction on the go at the same time. So I've got the
Good
Count of
idea.
Monte Cristo and then Val Kilmer's autobiography, uh, just to lighten things up while he
Yeah.
talks about his tongue cancer to get through and escape from the Count of Monte Cristo.
I think that's a really good idea. It also allows you to read more than one book at the same time without like the stories overlapping and you
Yeah,
getting confused where you are. Like I tend to read like three books at the same time just because I can't keep focused on one book. Like my brain just doesn't let me like like enjoy one book at one time.
yeah, and it sounds like something good to say to people when you're out as well. Well, I'm currently reading this, but I'm also reading this.
On a complete different note, what is your favorite genre of music?
It'd be trashy pop, I guess. The first, have you heard of Daniel Bedingfield?
I haven't.
It's just, so Daniel Bedingfield was big in the noughties, um, and he that's the first band, well, the first live music that I went to see when I was in sixth form. And I've been to see like Take That live.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, my housemates at university, we all went, and they were all they were all like 6'2", and we were in the standing bit, just stood in front of like very angry mums. Um, but yeah, that's kind of trashy pop, throwaway pop as my. I like a bit of rock and a bit of. I was raised on Motown from my parents, but
I've heard of them.
yeah, I just like to move around genre a bit.
My music taste is so it's honestly everywhere. It's
Mm,
so like I go from like Slipknot to like country music.
yeah,
Like it doesn't add up.
I think that's better though to kind of have a finger in each genre, um, so you don't miss anything. What's your
Yeah,
chosen karaoke song? Have you got a go-to karaoke song?
I should have one. Um, I I do have one, but it's very embarrassing.
Go on, you can tell us.
Might have to cut this bit out. It's honestly that embarrassing. It's Sweet Home, Alabama.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, it's just because you can like get the energy with that song. So I'll literally be like marching around the stage and stuff with the microphone singing the song.
Yeah, I like to go with "Ain't Nobody" Shaka Khan, which again, that gets people going. Or "Gotta Get Through This" by Daniel Bedingfield.
Yeah, I think I've heard of them.
There we go.
I'm learning today that I'm very uneducated with like movies and stuff.
I'm learning how old I am.
I would wow, we've nearly finished the starter questions. Do you have a favorite question that you have ever asked someone or that you have ever been asked?
Favorite question that I've ever been asked? Oh no. Um, God, that's like that's a big kind of dig deep into yourself kind of favorite question that I've ever been asked. Uh, God, no. I mean, I've had people tell me I'm brave, or how'd you be so brave for getting up on stage? And you're like, you're not brave. You're just a bit drunk. It's not that big a thing. Favorite ever question? No, that's flummoxed me, huh? So I'll have to answer no.
When I do these recordings and stuff, normally people will be like, "Oh, what's your favorite question then?" Because they can't really answer it, and then I've got the same reaction. I freeze and I'm like, "Yep." See why people are telling me to get rid of this question.
No, keep it in because you want to see people on the back foot. That's good. I like that. Start
Um,
asking people like, "What's the worst crime you've done?" You know.
yeah, I once asked that question. I think we talked about ghosts and stuff for about half an hour. It brings some interesting conversations sometimes.
That's it. I mean, that's a bold one to just straight up ask someone, "Have you ever seen a ghost?" Because then you're finding out the whole philosophy on life. Weirdly, I'm an atheist, but I have seen a ghost. I've definitely seen a ghost.
Okay, story time.
But well, I was dog sitting at my sister's when I was 15, and I was doing the dishes, and the kitchen looked out into the garden. And for a second, I thought there was someone stood in the garden, and then I realised that I didn't see someone in the garden. I saw the reflection of a man stood behind me. I turned around, no one there. Ran out the kitchen, and then half an hour later, genuinely, the fuses tripped downstairs, and all the lights went out. And so I had to call my parents and ask where was the fuse box in my sister's house, and it was in the kitchen. So I had to go into the kitchen and reset the fuses. So that was, and then I told my sister about it, and she was like, "Yeah, we've seen the same thing." And yet I'm still an atheist. Like it's a weird thing to be like, I've definitely seen a ghost, but I'm definitely an atheist.
I wasn't expecting that.
That's a bit better than my favorite book, I guess.
I was kind of expecting you to kind of just leave it at I saw something in the garden.
Oh,
That, yeah, I've not heard of that. Well, I have, but in movies.
it was horrible because I had to call my parents, and then I explained. My mum's a bit more spiritual inclined, and they're about a half-hour drive from my sister's. And my parents like, "Do you want us to come up?" And I was like, "No, I wouldn't be able to live that down if I got my mum and dad to come get me because I thought I saw a ghost." But I just spent the rest of the weekend on the couch with the dog there to protect me instead of me looking after the dog, I guess.
It tends to happen. I find my dog looks after me quite a lot, so quite normal for a dog. But yeah, no, I was not expecting that. It's one of those stories that you want to reply to it in a way that's like you've got something to add, but it's that surprising that you don't.
Yeah, I mean, I've not told many people about that because most people don't talk about ghosts. Like I say, I'm not a spiritual person. Like I'm very pragmatic. So I'd be fully open to thinking it was something that I just imagined, except that everyone in my who's ever lived in my sister's house has had something weird happen.
There's a really new show. Well, I say it's really new. I think it came out last year or the year before. Called Ghosts.
Oh yeah, the
Um,
BBC one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've not seen
And
that, but I've heard that's really good.
it's amazing. It's amazing. But I didn't believe in ghosts. I was like, no, they can't be ghosts. It has to be fake. And then I watched that show and now I want to believe in ghosts. It's and hope that one of those because they're really friendly in that show. One of those is just looking out and protecting me kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, well,
Um,
I suppose everything we know from ghosts, well, most of our culture from ghosts comes from like TV and movies, where
yeah.
it's normally either a really horrible horror movie or something. It's Patrick Swayze moving a penny around.
This is another question that I've been told to get rid of. So I
Okay, I'm
guess in a
ready.
way, strap yourself in. Have you read anything interesting recently?
Well, not the Count of Monte Cristo. That's taken me 4 years. Have I read anything? Oh, yes, today. Today
Okay.
I read about the new film that's coming out next year, Cocaine Bear. Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
So if you look up Cocaine Bear after this, it's a true story. So I was reading the
Okay.
article of what it's based on, and Elizabeth Banks is directing the film that's coming out next year. It's a true story about a bunch of cocaine that landed in the woods, and they found a bear that OD'd on this cocaine, and it had got into because it was drug smugglers, and one of the drug smugglers died because his parachute didn't open, and someone came out and he just found this guy on his patio with a parachute that hadn't opened properly, and he had like 70 pounds of cocaine on him, and then they found this bear, and it had OD'd on cocaine in the middle of the woods. So this bear had like the best last 2 hours of its life before peacing out.
So that's gonna be a film.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's gonna be a really interesting film.
yeah. Well, there's like the follow up afterwards is really mad as well because the bear got bought by like a museum, and it's called the
Yeah.
Cocaine Bear. And the autopsy is famous because they, as mad as scientists have been in the past and doctors, they haven't tested out. Let's just kill a bear with cocaine.
It's upsetting. It's a really sad story, to be fair,
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah,
but it's gonna be an interesting movie.
yeah, yeah. I thought they were gonna. It's not going to be a comedy because it's. I think the bear is like just a side thing that's made it famous, but the insane thing is like the story of the guys who were doing the drug running and the
Yeah,
decision he
yeah.
made to jump out the plane with a parachute. He apparently he aimed the plane just towards the sea so it wouldn't land on anyone. There must have been an issue. I think he was being followed by like DEA, and so he's just jumped out with his drugs on him, and the drugs have been so heavy they pulled him down.
That's quite a sad story. Um, I am looking forward to seeing that though.
Yeah, it should be good. Hopefully,
In future episodes of this podcast, I might get someone saying that their favorite movie is. I'm also quite surprised with how easily you answered that question, because normally it takes people so long to be like, I don't know.
no, it's,
Um,
it's on my mind because I put it in the group WhatsApp today with my friends just to say this is something that we need to go see.
yeah,
Um, the best thing about the article was it said that the bear is known under many names, including Pablo Escobar, which is my favorite line.
that's it for the getting to know you questions.
Okay, do you feel like you know me now?
Yeah. The rest of the questions are going to be about your life doing stand-up.
Oh God. Okay. All right.
What was your life like before you started stand-up?
I was happy. No, I used to work in a bank. I was doing quite well in a bank. I worked abroad over in India and set things up for. I won't say the name of the bank, uh, but I was doing quite well. But it's still like you feel that there's something missing. There's like an absence, um, and then you get into stand up and it kind of it makes you happy in a different way. So I'd say successful and doing well and making my parents proud before I got into stand up. That was my life.
I started doing stand-up and I make the mistake of telling people that I'm doing stand-up,
Yeah, no, don't do
and
that.
their response to me all the time is, okay, well, tell me a joke, give me a set. I don't know if you find this problem, but it's always like you can't just give them a joke because one, you're telling it to one person, so you're kind of like, if this person doesn't laugh, then it's different to performing it to one person than a full room,
Yeah,
because then if one
um,
person doesn't laugh, it's fine because maybe some of the other people did. But when you're performing it to one person, if they don't laugh, it's awkward.
yeah. If people say like people who say that tend to be a little bit bitter about it. Well, not bitter, but it's that thing of like, oh, so you think that you're funny enough that you'll go up and do it on stage, and it's they realize that there's that part of them they can't do. Um, so if whenever people just say tell me a joke, I just say, all right, give me some money. It's a job, so pay me.
Yeah.
If you met a plumber, you wouldn't be like, all right, then fix that pipe. It's an occupation. So also, you can probably just take the mick out of something about them. If you say, tell me a joke, you'd be like, that shirt you're wearing right now is probably the biggest joke in this room.
I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah.
I find that like my jokes aren't just like one-liners, so they literally have to stand in front of me for like 2 minutes.
Well, yeah, there's a few really good one-liner comedians around, but in
Yeah.
general, comedy's moved away from that. So if someone said, tell us a joke, you'd have to give them the whole setup and be like, okay, well, I was living with my girlfriend at this time and she hadn't paid the bills for this. And I was doing, and you've got to set up the whole premise. It's not,
Yeah.
no one just does I went into the pub with my dog the other day type stuff.
Yeah.
And by the time you explain the theory of comedy to someone who says, go on, then tell us a joke, they've already got bored and wandered off somewhere to annoy someone else.
Back to what your life was like. Sorry, that just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, let's go.
So would you say that your life has got better since you started doing stand-up?
Yeah. I mean, as I say, I was doing quite well financially, but there was something missing. I'd always had the dream to do stand up, and it was just when I was like 28, I think, and I could feel 30 knocking on the door. That I had a word with myself and said, "All right, time to give it a proper go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work." But it's been going well since.
What year did you start?
It's I think 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did a course for the hot water comedy up in
Yeah, yeah,
Liverpool.
yeah.
I did a course there. Adam Rowe taught it, and it was more. It was that was more for people who wanted a bit of confidence because they were doing a best man speech or something. But it just opened the door to meeting people who would be tempted to go to other gigs and stuff. So I did that, and then I only did about 5 gigs up north, and then I moved to London, where London you can gig every night.
Do you find that it is better to gig up north?
Yeah, it's different. It's you can have more fun, I think. Yeah, I'd say yeah. The only difference for me would be down south. I'm a northerner, so you've got that kind of special thing that differentiates you. When I'm gigging in London, I can push my Scouseness a bit, whereas up north, I'd be very similar to the other acts. But I do find that northerners tend to be more jovial. You can rip them a bit more. Everyone's just more up for a laugh.
Do you remember your first show?
Yeah. Well, first one would be the you do like a graduation gig because I did that course.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
absolutely died on my arse, like completely bombed, which was one of the best things to have happened to me because I went home and actually sat down and said, all right, well, this isn't good enough. So if I'd just done okay, I probably wouldn't have had a proper sit down and reevaluated the types of stuff I was doing. But yeah, it's funny how long 7 minutes lasts if you're bombing. But that I bombed so bad that someone heckled at a graduation gig where it's meant to be like, here you go, guys, this is their first ever time, blah blah. And someone shouted. So the previous act before me had also bombed, talking about giraffes, and someone halfway through my set just shouted giraffe to reference that I was also bombing as bad as the person before me. Which at graduation is that's like going to someone's christening and being like, that dress is shit. But I'd say it toughened me up, and I'll always remember that idiot shouting giraffe at me.
I mean, in a way, that's made you who you are today. It
Bitter,
wasn't
yeah.
good. It wasn't good that it happened, but in a way, it is. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I went home and got rid of everything that I'd said, sat down and wrote some stuff that was a bit more personal to me, and then the set that I wrote there got me through to Liverpool New Comedian final, which I
That's
think
pretty good.
if I hadn't bombed in that first one, I would have been doing that. other material, which would have got me nowhere. So if you have a bomb, just take it as, this is healthy and not, oh God, I'm going to go drink on my own in a dark room.
I've recently been seeing it that like I was doing really good, like I was getting a lot of laughs and it was really, really good. And then recently I've just been going so far downhill. Um, which isn't great because I'm doing a 10 minute, like it's my second ever in-person show and I'm doing 10 minutes on Thursday next week.
Oh God.
So
Yeah, you'll be fine.
I'm a bit scared. So you mentioned that you kind of always wanted to do stand-up. What was it? Was there only like a point where originally made you want to?
So I'd always made, members of my family laugh, people at school. Um, and it's just the best feeling when you get known as, the funny one. Obviously all my friends are stand-ups now, so I'm not known as that anymore. I've been relegated a few leagues, but yeah, it was. I think the best feeling is, I think we're all guilty of when you say something funny, you look at everyone to double check. Everyone's laughing at that. Great, I smashed that. And just thought, well, why not do it en masse? And it is like, you've had them big laughs on stage. It's the best feeling.
Makes me feel really confident. So I completely know where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, I'm quite shy in like socials. If I don't know everyone in a social group, which people are surprised at because I'm a high energy act on stage. But if you put me in with a group of people, like sometimes if you start a new place at work and you get put on like a team building exercise, I hate that. I hate getting to know new people, all of that. I won't be like okay, guys, let's get into this. But yeah, I mean, it means you can always switch into that mode of, all right, well, I spoke to, hundreds of people that I don't know from a stage. So I'm sure I can talk to this these two people.
I completely know where you're coming from. Um, like I've always been the one that kind of struggled to make friends, not because like I couldn't, but because going up to people that were in a group and be like, hello, like talking to them is a scary feeling.
Yeah, and you have to do it like so many times as well. Like when you go to a new school, when you go to university, when you start a new job, if you join a sports team, I started playing five-a-side football this year, just to stop me from having a stroke. And it's weird. I'm a grown man, and yet you sat in a changing room, not knowing how to turn to people and go, "Hello, we're probably going to end up being friends because we're on the same team now." It's weird.
The people in the audience want you to do as well as you want to do. It's not like that you go out there and they want you to do horribly. Like you're talking to people that want to hear you. You're talking to people that in some cases have turned up to see you instead of going to somewhere where you kind of forced to talk to someone.
Yeah, when you start out, I'd say most audiences have the vibe of a parent that's behind you when you're first riding a bike. They are like, "Oh, come on, there's a joke there. You can do this." I mean, I've done some gigs where the audiences are just horrible and coked up, and they just want someone to shout at and abuse. But 99% of gigs are people going, we came here to laugh, and if there's a chance to laugh at something that you said, we'll do it.
What is the best moment of your career?
The best. Um, I mean, there's been a bunch. I think one of the greatest feelings was I did Covent Garden Comedy Club a few years back, and I think there was about 270 in, so it was a great. I smashed it, but the best thing was my friend Tom was in there, and he'd been at like my eighth gig when it was in a pub to six people in the middle of the day for charity, and it was like it was your classic starting out in comedy scenario. And he took a picture of that gig. That was like my eighth gig, and then he took a picture of this gig and he put up this post, and it was nice to see like not just because you go to a gig and you develop yourself, but it was nice to kind of discuss with him afterwards and say because he'd actually seen both performances to say like how much I'd grown, and what a difference it was.
Quite sweet, actually.
Yeah. So yeah, that's. I mean, you kind of have your ranking in your head of your top 10 gigs, and they'll slip in and out, and you'll move stuff around. I had one Halloween. I think Halloween 2018 it must have been. I was hosting a gig in South Kensington, and it was just a perfect gig. Like they'd put on, you win a prize if you come in fancy dress. The whole audience was just really behind like the concept of everyone having a great time. And once I left the gig, I rang home and said to my parents, I know that it's, to go from a stable job in finance to something completely, you're looking at 4 years of not making any money probably. But I've just had one of the greatest nights of my life. And I always remember that, is that I made sure to pick up on, like, kind of grab onto that great feeling.
That's quite sweet, actually. And what is your worst moment in your career?
I mean, I've got a few. I've got some great bombings. I, I gigged in a boxing ring in Northampton, where it was in between the fights. They had a musician, and then there was only one comedian, me, in between a fight. 70% of the people got up to go get a drink. The microphone was it was the kind of mic that kicks in and out of the sound, so people couldn't hear me.
Oh, no.
And at one point, I was being heckled 360 degrees, which like I'd already spoke. My friend drove me to the gig, and I'd said in the car, "This is going to be a nightmare." Like, so I was prepared for it, so that was fine. And then probably the other lowest moment, I was doing a corporate for a golf club, and I'd spoken to their captain, and I'd said, you've seen my stuff on YouTube, right?" And he was like, "Yeah, don't worry, we're not a wanky golf club. It's just it's post COVID. Everyone's just up for a laugh, and we've been locked in for 2 years, so we just want to have a bit of fun." And so I agreed to the contract, and then he was like, "And it's black tie, by the way, so you've got a tux." So I was like, "Oh, so it's quite formal then." And he was like, "Yeah, but don't worry, it'll be fun." I got to the gig, and instead of being able to go like write my set down somewhere, he put me in the VIP room with like the previous captain, so I didn't have any time to think to myself. Get introduced as the end of dinner speaker, not a comedian or an entertainer. So half of them are sat around going, "Oh, so this must be someone who's played golf, or we don't know." And it was cabaret style seating, so at any point, 50% of the people are not sat facing towards you. I was supposed to do 20 minutes. I did 8 minutes to silence. And the lasting memory that's in my head, I was sat behind some like 80-year-old guy who was he just had his head in his hands going like that. And the only laughs that I got was when someone went up to go to the toilet, and I said he's going off to do some drugs. And that made the two people who were under the age of 40 that were in that room laugh. And what's great is the guy who hired me, he wasn't timing the gig. So I came over and said, "I'm sorry that I only did 15 minutes instead of the 20. I did 8 minutes because I know I had it on my watch, but he wanted me to come off as well." So he was like, "No, it's okay. It's fine." The absolute worst part of that, because it was terrible. There was such an awkward, like, we've hired the wrong person for this. The person who was coming to pick me up from this golf club, because he was out in the middle of nowhere, couldn't get to me for another 45 minutes. So I had to stand in the bar with everyone who I just bombed in front of. Normally when you finish a gig, it's nice to go into the bar because people walk past you and you go, "That was great. You're great. Can I buy you a drink?" No one would make eye contact with me at all. And I just had to stand there waiting for this So that's probably the worst, like at that point, because they were paying me as well, and I felt so bad. I was like, oh, you could have used this money to get someone in who is more on your vibe. So yeah, that one.
Like, how far into stand up were you? Like, how many years were you going at that point?
Oh, this was last year, so it didn't have an impact on me in terms of when you first start out and you bomb, you put everything on yourself and go, I'm not funny, I'm terrible. I I was mature enough to go, that just wasn't the right match of comedian to audience, and as much as I tried to do stuff to please them, um, the vibe was just completely off. Always blame the
That's
audience.
upsetting.
If you ever bomb, always blame the audience.
I do know that you can do one set of jokes in one place and tell it in a particular way, and then go to another and like get loads of laughs, and then go to a different place, do the exact same jokes in the exact same way, and do it to silence.
I've had that in the same venue on the same night. Some gigs they'll have like an 8 o'clock and then a 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
I've had that where you do the exact same set and it just doesn't land right. And in one, it goes great. Other one, awful.
Which one was it that didn't go great? Was it the first or the second one?
I think it was the second one because it was a later audience. So people are drunk, and this was one of these like back alley comedy gigs where people get shuffled in from a pub and weren't really expecting comedy.
So I've seen your videos on like social media and stuff, and you're extremely funny. Like you're very, very good at stand up. What are your jokes normally about?
Nothing, I think. I don't really dig that deep. I don't. Well, yeah, I don't really have that many opinions on. I don't cover big stuff. It tends to be like I realized because I started out doing really self-deprecating stuff. I'm overweight for those people listening, and it was all self-deprecating. We're kind of low status, and then about 2 years in, I switched it up to being, what if I was doing self-deprecating, but I was angry at the audience for laughing at those things, and that slight change. So the approach I take is, it's normally about things that are going wrong in my life, but I'm angry at the audience for finding that funny, which just adds it's still low status, but it just puts you up a bit. And I don't really get that much problems with hecklers because I come out shouting. Like I tend to come out screaming at the audience. But in terms of content, though, mainly relatable stuff. Like my club set right now is kind of red flags in terms of getting into a relationship and the problems with estate agents. I'm not reinventing the wheel or doing anything that, I'm not doing any soul searching, anything like that.
I think because you mentioned that you go on stage like already shouting, I think that is maybe the best way to go on stage because you're kind of already in that persona.
That came about because my hand used to shake when I was holding the mic.
Yeah.
You'd get up and I'd noticed, and it'd annoy me because I was feeling confident, I wasn't nervous, but my hand was shaking. And so I wondered, like, the best way to get through that is if I can just not hold the mic for the first 20 seconds. So I come out, and unless I'm hosting, in which case you have to be a different vibe, I'll come out and start just screaming yes at the audience until I know that once I put my hand on that mic, it's not going to shake.
What is your favorite joke that you have told?
Oh, my favorite joke that I've told. There was one that I felt really, really smug about. When I first wrote it, it was the whole set was 5 and then turned into 10. I called a good week, bad week, where I told the audience how my week had gone. So I did this on a Monday, did this on a Tuesday, and then got to the end of the week, and then explained what my housemate had told me. So everything switched, and it was actually a terrible week Dad had. So I talk about like um, a young lady coming to see me, but she actually turns out to be a police officer because of some complaints. And how I got a Domino's, but the Domino's they wouldn't give me it because I've got type 2 diabetes, and it was all like half of the set was just callbacks, completely switching what I'd set up, and I was really smug about that until I realised what I'd done is, um, if that didn't work, I'd invested so much into the next 5 to 10 minutes. Like if people aren't on board with the vibe, if you start doing a bit that's just a generic, what's the deal with getting dumped, bloody blah, and it's not working, you can pull out and be like, so who rents here? But with that set, like at the time of doing it, it was like that was the first time I started playing with structure of what you can do on stage. So yeah, I was pretty proud of that.
I think it's a good joke, but I do see what you mean by it. When you start telling it, it's too late to back out.
Yeah, that's why with character acts, it's in like I love watching character comedy, but when they get up on stage and they're bombing and they can't pull out of it, they can't kind of go, oh, it's actually me, Craig. Don't worry about it. They have to then just stay in that character and let it bomb.
Yeah.
Which, like, I'm a big fan of being able to pull the lever and go, all right, we're going to dump that because nobody's enjoying that. Let's talk about something completely different, and I'll pull out some gold.
How do you tend to normally like write your jokes?
It's why I've got really bad memory in terms of remembering my jokes. So I just pick one subject and then try and write it in a way that I'll remember. So I imagine it kind of as a roller coaster that touches on different points. So, and then within each of those peaks and troughs, I'll write gags that I can remember, but they kind of have to connect. So it kind of has to be a 5 or 10 or 15 minute story where then I'll break that down into 2 minute sections, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. Who's your dream like person to go on tour with?
Oh, alive or dead?
Either, either.
Because Richard Pryor would have been pretty wild. Richard Pryor in the 80s. I mean, I'd probably end up like that bear, just belly full of cocaine. Alive right now, do you know? Because I'm older and I get, you go to a gig and you have a couple of pints and you get tired. I'd say probably Greg Davies because I imagine he would be all right, the gig's done. We'll have one pint and that's it. And that's the ideal for me. One pint after a big Friday gig, and then everyone don't talk to me. I did I did a gig with someone in Northampton. Bragg did a gig in Northampton. Don't want to show off, but that was a couple of weeks ago, and the headliner and me both got to the train station at the same time, and we both just in a moment decided I'm going to pretend I haven't seen you so I can put my headphones on for this hour-long journey back to London. So that's also someone who understands. You might need a bit of me time after a gig. Would be perfect.
About Greg, I think Greg would be amazing to go on tour with. I think that he's incredibly funny.
So Greg, if you ever watch this, yeah, sure, I'll be tour support. Fine.
I'm here. I think it'd be really good. Apart from Greg, do you have any idols that are in comedy or just in your life?
I think Rick Mail. I really miss Rick Mail. He was, growing up, it was a lot of American stand-up that me and my brother would watch on our little TV in our shared bedroom. But the silliness of watching Bottom, and there's like an integrity behind Rick Mail that when you see him in interviews, he didn't take himself too seriously, but I feel like he always took his fans quite seriously. So I'd say he's kind of my idol when I was growing up. And in my personal life, absolutely no one. I got to where I am because of me. and I always make sure that my family and friends know that nobody inspires me in real life.
Fair enough. Despite not knowing any of the movies or the books and stuff that you mentioned at the start, I do know who Rick is, and he was like amazing. He was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, being a
Um,
kid, have you ever seen Drop Dead Fred?
yeah,
That when you're a kid, that's amazing. Just that there's an imaginary friend who can come out and actually do all these crazy things.
how do you normally deal with pre-gig nerves?
Um, so I have a weird thing about even though I don't need to drink it, I need to make sure that there's water available for me. Like I panic a bit if I'm about to go on stage and there's no water. But apart from that, I I'm all right with pre-gig nerves. Like I'll tend to try and psych out the other acts as a way. Like it tends to help them, you know. But if I'm in the green room with someone, I'll say to someone, you know, this is a really big gig. People are watching who are quite important. I hope we don't mess this up. Just because it kind of gets that anxiety out into the air
Yeah,
and puts it on someone else, which you know they can have it. I don't want to. But apart from that, yeah, I make sure I have a bit of OCD about time as well. Like I need to. I don't like doubling up a lot because if I get to a venue early, that makes me feel more comfortable, and I'll always try and watch what the MC is doing because you know it's a tool that they're giving you. You can learn about the room as soon as you can throw in like a half baked callback to what the MC has learned. You know, if you're talking about, well, I say this, but the couple over there sounds like they're getting split up, and people are like, oh my god, they're addressing something that happened 20 minutes ago. What a genius thing that they've done, and all you've done is said, I heard what he said about these two. So I always try and listen to what the MC is learning from people. That's about it. Yeah, water and know what's going on in the room.
that makes sense. I think with me, I just kind of I listen to really weird music before I go on stage. And when I say really weird, I don't mean like the Alvin and the Chipmunks. I mean like there's a TV show that I absolutely love called People Just Do Nothing. And I listen to the soundtrack from that TV show before I go on stage.
No, I mean that's if you found a thing that makes you comfortable for a gig, that's great. You know, the thing that makes me feel comfortable is kind of forgetting that I'm about to go do comedy. That's why I'll talk to the other acts. I'll mess about on my phone.
Yeah.
Because up until you're going on stage, there's nothing you can really do in that interval. So yeah, you might as well listen to some music to get you ready, or what I like to do, put the other acts off.
Has social media helped you at all within like promoting your stand-up and stuff?
Not not a lot. Like it it's nice. You'll sometimes you'll clear a few tickets. Because I'm a promoter as well, so we run a few gigs around London. Me and a couple of friends, and but it's only people who have kind of found you through a live gig. I've not picked up any audiences from people who've seen a video of me and then come to a gig. It's normally someone who's been at a gig, liked what I've done, chosen to follow me, and then I've popped up saying I'm gigging here, and then they've come to see me. But then I'm pretty bad at social media. I should put more videos up on, but it's just such a ball ache of putting stuff up. You got to work out what's the right format for Twitter. This is going on Instagram. What time is it going up? What hashtags are we using? And it's I'm getting a bit better at it, but it's it's so time consuming when all you want to do is get up on stage and do some live stuff.
I've been told that if I'm not funny on Twitter, there's no way I can make it. Like I'm never gonna be a known comedian.
No, that's not true. There's so many great club comics that don't use social media at all, and you can tell the ones because they're a lot happier. Like I was getting ready to delete all my social media before I started doing stand up, and then to an extent you do have to have it, or it's a good ladder to help you up. But it's different types of comedians. If you're a long form storyteller, yeah, you're gonna struggle putting out a tweet that's funny every day, and it rewards you for it. Like annoyingly, I do prep my tweets, so I'll try and put out 2 a day. I tend to put out about 6 a day, and then I'll delete 4 that don't get any traction, and it's horrible because you start to treat your own jokes like something that you're pulling out of a ring binder. But and sometimes you'll tweet something where you're like, "This is so funny. This is one of the best things I've ever written," and it won't get anything. And then you'll tweet like a picture of an elf with his bum out, and it'll go viral. And there's no rules here. How do things go viral?
It is upsetting. I've tweeted some stuff that I thought was really funny. That like I've said in gigs and stuff, and they've got laughs. I'll post it, and then it'll get like 3 likes on Twitter.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I set up a rule of it has to have a certain amount of likes, and if not, I'll just get rid of it. And you have to be, savage with your own stuff, because then your Twitter account is kind of your portfolio of gags. So you want it to look as strong as possible, which is annoying. But if you come up, do you come up with something funny and then just put it in your Twitter drafts?
I tend to just think of something funny, and then if I still find it funny in like a minute, or if I still remember it, I will then post it.
Yeah, I tend to put it in my drafts, and then I'll go back to it with like maybe a different viewpoint, and see if I can tweak it. But then it's so stupid. It's Twitter. It's run by an idiot right now, and the world would be better once he drives it into the ground.
I've got friends who started around the same time I did, and have done more, like in this time that I've done stand up, they've done more stand up, they've done more nights and stuff. And like it's come to a point where I feel like I'm comparing myself to them. And I'm like, why am I not doing as good as they are? Why have they got like fans and stuff and I've got nothing? And it can be very upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few kind of unofficial rules that I live my life by, and one that I always remind myself is always look at your own ladder. Everyone's got different rungs on there, and being upset about a friend who's getting a better gig is not going to help me on my ladder. Which I know it sounds very kind of quasi, let's all get these healing crystals and just think about our own journey, but it's good just to. I'd rather celebrate a friend's like success, and it is hard when you see someone, especially when in your head you're going, I am better than them. But the way I see it, if somebody who's at the same quality as me or a bit lower is getting a gig like that, that means that they're gigs that can be it's attainable.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm so proud of my friend.
You've come off very angry here, Sam. Very bitter. I'm sure. I'm actually worried about your friend's health now, and safety.
No, I'm really really proud of her. Well, I mean, by the point this is out, it had already been happened, but she's like, where she lives, there's no stand up. Like there's no open mic really where she lives. So instead of being upset about that, she's opened her own.
That's great.
Which is like I'm so proud of her. So I think she's doing amazing. It's just sometimes I'm like, wish I was doing that. Feel a bit jealous of that.
Well, I'm sure. Have you thought about starting a night in Huddersfield?
No, but there is one, and I'm doing it next week. It's the one I'm doing next week.
Okay. Go in there, take it over.
Yeah, be like, this is my job now.
Yeah.
I think if I walked in and said that, they might actually just send me home.
Yeah, wait till you're on stage and then just say, right, look, this is actually my comedy club now. I
Yeah.
would recommend like because I MC quite a bit as well, and I'd recommend to anyone to MC because it just gives you such a great different tool on your belt. So, you know, I'd ask them if you can MC a quieter night or something like that. Obviously, maybe get ingrained with them first. That's what's
Yeah.
quite one thing. Like some people, they gig all around everywhere, but if you find one place that you also focus on as well, it's like down in London, I found one. It was an open mic club, but it was the one that I just kept gigging at until they gave me a Friday night there to run myself. Um, so that helps if you just ingratiate yourself with one kind of club. I mean, obviously gig around, but to be well known in one place means that you can always normally jump on a spot there. You can start running your own nights there.
I think I really want to MC. I think that'd be really good.
Yeah, I mean the great thing about MCing is you don't actually have to be funny.
Yes.
Like not everything that you say has to be funny. I mean, it's funny when you see people who are first starting out at MCing and they'll say to someone, "What's your job?" and they'll go, "I'm a mechanic," and you watch the MC panic and be like, "Okay, the next thing I say has to be really funny about this job." No, you can just explore. Just talk to people. It's just talking to people, putting them at ease. And if you find a route to, have a pretend mishap where you've not really understood what the job is or what's going on in their relationship, that's fun. And also you've got the ultimate like escape button of being able to go, okay, let's bring an act on if things aren't going well.
I think that like I'd love to MC.
Most of the time, once you've done the opening bit, you're just introducing the next act, but
Yeah.
you can still have fun with the audience. You set the tone as the MC. You're the one who says this is what the vibe is for the night.
And I think that is why the MC, the first open mic I did, was already quite drunk. Just setting the vibe. Have you got any advice for anyone that wants to start comedy?
Quit. No. Let's see. I mean, we've gone over quite a bit of it. Gig as much as you can in the first couple of years. I found that I dropped off from my social life quite a bit, and you can feel guilty about that. But your real friends will understand that it's not. Some people just see it as a hobby, and they think you're spending quite a lot of time doing that hobby, but you're working towards a goal. And some people won't understand that, especially because in everyone's head, they're thinking, oh, your ultimate goal must be that you want to be on TV. Whereas, for me, my ultimate goal was making enough money to pay my rent through comedy. And they don't see that there's different levels to that. So, I mean, like I said, I love movies, and I realized after calming it down a bit after a couple of years, I was like, oh, I don't think I've been to the cinema in like 2 years because I was just gigging, but just gig as much as you can and don't be afraid to bomb. As long as if you're finding that you're bombing every night, maybe change some stuff. But what's good is when the people that you're in front of, you're probably never going to see them again.
Yeah.
That's how I treat things going bad. And if it goes well, make a joke about them following you on your preferred social media so you can start to build a brand. Do you drive?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't drive, and that's advice I would have given myself. If I could go back 10 years and say, there is a way here that you can help ruin the planet quicker, but also the second that you're a comedian who drives, you get such better gigs.
I kind of find I wouldn't trust myself behind it like a wheel. I wouldn't trust myself.
Yeah, I mean, there's all the different comedy forums where someone will post, we're looking for a driver to take, this headline act to here. And if you can snap it up, you start to move in circles that will help you advance quicker. I mean, I'm saying this as someone who does not drive, but that's just something that I've seen.
Do you have any like notes you want to give to your previous self?
Pre-comedy, like we're talking.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing really soul searching. I would tell younger me to get into cycling a lot earlier. As I cycle quite a bit, and it's really good for mental health. Like especially during COVID, just to go out on a bike ride is absolutely a game changer. So I would have grabbed young me and told me to really get into cycling because I didn't really properly get into it till I was about 25, maybe, where because my housemate cycled, and so I'd just come home from work, and instead of going to the pub and having a beer, we'd take the bikes out and cycle around Northampton. I used to live in Northampton. We wouldn't just say, let's go cycle around Northampton. Um, but yeah, apart from that, I don't really have that much advice to give younger me. Maybe get contact lenses before university, otherwise you'll end up in Spain one day and lose your glasses and have to be walking around like a guide dog. But apart from that, yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way the dice have landed.
I think that might be it. Yeah, you've.
Oh, cheers, Sam. That was fun.
What I need to do during my podcast recordings is have like a notebook just next to me so I can like write down my ideas. Because I had so many during this podcast and they've all gone.
Well, that's how we'll promote it. We'll promote it as this could have been the greatest podcast ever recorded if it wasn't for Sam and Jamie, not bringing their A games.